Hello, and welcome back to this month's episode of The Skin Check. The Skin Check with Jenn is a monthly segment hosted by me, Jenn SCHULTZ, as an opportunity for low ultraviolet ambassadors and other skin cancer advocates to have a platform to share their story, offer advice, as well as show support for others. So today, I'm really excited to introduce you to Paige. Paige and I became friends earlier this year when we met at an ACS CAN, American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network event. Paige is also a young melanoma survivor from Nebraska. She's a cancer advocate, and then she is the Vice SLA, which is the Vice Lead Ambassador with ACS CAN for her state, very similar to me. So that was how we first connected and have become friends since then. Today, she's passionate about teaching other young adults about sun safety, the dangers of tanning both indoors and outdoors, as well as overcoming common misconceptions and misinformation among other people her age around sun safety. So, Paige, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, thank you. I know we've been wanting to do this for a while now, so I'm excited to be here with you today and finally get to talk about it.
Yes, me too. And I know that especially young survivor stories are just, we don't hear enough about them. So I'm really excited for you to have an opportunity to share yours. But I really want to start out first. Every episode, I like to really emphasize the fact that while we talk about cancer in each of these episodes, we really are more than just our cancer story. So in your own words, can you tell us a little bit about who you are just as a person before your melanoma diagnosis?
Yeah, definitely. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I've lived here pretty much my whole life other than college. I went to the University of Nebraska. I got my business management degree, but right now I'm working as a non-medical care companion. And so I kind of get to use my advocacy skills that I do through ACS CAN kind of with them in a way, going with them to appointments and stuff. So yeah, it's been a tough, journey to get here, but I'm very grateful to be here today and get to share my story and hopefully make a difference in the lives of others, because I feel like it's really important to share my story and hopefully someone else can relate and take something positive out of it.
Yeah, well, and just even in your intro, you made a really interesting point. So it's so cool that you get to use your experience to do that in your career. And I think that's something that a lot of us wish that we had, is somebody that would kind of go through and walk through with us. And so we sort of use these conversations as a non-medical way of being able to do that. And one challenge that we're really facing is we're seeing more and more people being diagnosed with skin cancer and melanoma at a young age. And you were especially young when you were diagnosed, which I think really makes your story even more important to share. Can you tell us what made you decide to get that first skin check, and then what happened in the immediate aftermath of your diagnosis?
Yeah, so my senior year of high school, there was a mole that showed up on my left thigh. And, my mom, she's a pharmacist, so she's in the medical field. And one day in the summer going into my freshman year of college, she decided it'd probably be a good idea for us to go get it, taken off and just kind of see if anything would come out of it. And actually, the day I left for college to go down for sorority recruitment, I went and got my mole taken off and then headed down to college. And then 3 weeks later, my mom drove down to Kansas. I was at KU at the time. And she sat me down on the front porch of my dorm. And she told me, before I tell you this, I don't want you to do any research, on Google. But I do want you to know that, your mole came back as melanoma in situ. Thankfully, we had someone we knew that worked with the dermatologist, and she was able to get me an appointment 2 days after to get it removed. And yeah, I was awake during the surgery. They numbed the area really well. It was definitely really scary. My mom afterwards was like, "Do you want to go get manicures?" And I was like, "No, I just want to go home and just think about what I just went through." But yeah, after that, I started getting involved with ACS CAN. So
I just think that is such an important thing to bring up, because my first melanoma diagnosis it was stage 1B, so still an early stage, but they had to do like lymph node tracing and a sentinel node biopsy. So I was automatically put under because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when I had my second excision, I had no idea that I was going to be awake for it. And so I very much thought that they were just doing prep work, and they gave me the lidocaine and everything to numb me up. But then all of a sudden they were like sewing me back together. And I was like, are you sewing me back together? And
Oh
so
no.
I think sometimes I think doctors sometimes think we know more, especially if you have a history, they think we know more of what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And so just being able to have those connections with other people that are going through it and knowing what to expect from the patient side of things is so important. Doctors get so involved in their jobs, sometimes they forget about what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah, and again, like I'm very grateful for my doctor. He was great, but
Mm-hmm.
it definitely was very scary. I feel like I didn't really realize what was happening until after the fact a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because cancer, the way it happened for me, it was a in and out kind of thing. I didn't have many other complications or any other major surgeries. But, I still had cancer, and I feel like that word is so powerful that, no matter how big or small, it's still really scary to hear the words you have cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with that. I think sometimes, the doctors get so involved in what they're doing, and I'm so grateful for it. But, it's, I was 18 years old at the time, and I didn't really know much. No one I knew ever had experience with melanoma or skin cancer. So, it was just kind of like, okay, this is happening, and I have to deal with it. And it changed my life. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were very much preparing for getting ready for school, starting college, that transition, and then had this whole other really big transition come in. And there's not really any way in any aspect of it to know what to expect. It really does change your life. And sometimes it takes a few months for that to sink in. And especially when we're 18, like we're aware, of course, that cancer can happen, but we never really expect
mhm.
that it's going to happen to us. And I think this is one of the challenges that you and I have talked about before, because you've had people in your friend group or friends of friends ask you questions that it really highlights how little education there still is about sun damage and how to protect yourself. You've shared with me that, you would like to survey young women around our age and ask them why they don't take proper precautions and, why they still think tanning indoors is safer than tanning outdoors and things like that. What do you think, because of those conversations with your friends and other people around your age, what is the biggest thing preventing them from using things like sunscreen and UPF clothing?
I think it's a mix of a few things. In my opinion, I think it's a mix of like misinformation. Recently, there's been a lot of misinformation about the use of sunscreen, and I think that plays into a lot of people not wanting to use it. But I also think just not having the, I guess, awareness in a way, like, I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but like an understanding they were never really taught safe, sun protection. I mean, for me growing up, my mom, we loved going out in the sun, and I was a very fair-skinned girl. My mom remembers when I was in show choir, someone saying, you're the palest girl up there, and that's kind of what started my.
Oh.
It's really uncomfortable being in your body when you feel so pale, and as a girl, I think, it ties into the way you view your body. So I think that plays a big role into it, kind of the societal pressure to not use sunscreen to get that tan or that sunburn. So yeah, I personally would like to see more, education in, elementary schools and in high schools, kind of teaching kids the way to protect their skin because down the road it could save them. I just think it's not taken as seriously as it should be, which is really frustrating sometimes.
Mm-hmm. The sunscreen thing is such a big thing that I've seen going around lately where
Mm-hmm.
people are like sunscreen causes cancer, but really sunscreen is the biggest thing preventing many of us from
Mm-hmm.
getting cancer. And then another really important thing that you brought up too is I think in general as young women, it's hard to feel comfortable in our bodies as a whole. And then when we have these stigmas like, oh, tan skin is more beautiful than pale skin, you're already dealing with a lot of, whether it's body dysmorphia or body image issues and comparison on social media. And then to have this other thing when we're taught that sun damage is more beautiful than healthy skin.
And I see that a lot with my friends. They're always saying, oh, I got the best sunburn today, or because they think it's going to turn into a tan. And yeah, oh, the other thing was that, like, when it's cloudy out, people think, just because it's cloudy, I'm not going to get sunburned. And that's also, not true. You can still get sunburned, and it can still cause damage to your skin.
It can be really almost painful when you hear it from people that you're close to, or like good friends or family members, when they believe that misinformation, or even worse, if they're like spreading it or sharing it, because it feels like it's diminishing our experiences and what we've gone through. And they've seen us go through it or seen the changes that we've had to make, which can be difficult. I mean, I was out for a walk the other day and just thinking, oh, like, I really do sometimes miss being able to have tan skin, and why do I feel that way? And it's because it's so ingrained in what we're taught in society that that's, more attractive. And so then when we have people that are close to us really buying into those misconceptions, or spreading the things that like sunscreen is unsafe, or, well, I have a base tan, so I'll be fine. It can be really hurtful.
Yeah, and I have experienced, times where I felt very hurt by someone, bragging about going to the tanning beds or being out in the sun all day without sunscreen and being so proud of their tan. And it just hits me in a spot where it's like, I used to be like that once. And, I guess I have to look at it as, in a way, this is a positive because it helped me grow as a person and, kind of accept me for me. And it's not every day that I feel that way, but, I've transitioned over to spray tans, and, I use that, and I find that to be a lot less stressful. And so there is other options too, people just think they have to go out in the sun and burn their skin, and they don't really think about the fact that down the line, that's when it could, it might not happen tomorrow, but, in 5 years, you don't know what damage you're doing to your body now is going to do to you in 5 years. And I wish I would have had that knowledge back in the day when I was going tanning and stuff.
Yeah, same. Like so much of what you're saying resonates with me. Another thing that we've talked about too, which isn't really misinformation, but maybe it is more about the way that people are using it, is red light therapy. So a lot of companies are promoting things like red light therapy as a way to decrease the harmful effects of tanning beds. I think back even to a few months ago when Kim Kardashian made that reel and she had a tanning bed in her office. And then she also had red light therapy. But we know that red light therapy can't actually reduce the risk of skin cancer from tanning. Why do you think that young people want to believe this so strongly? And why is it so important to them to continue using tanning beds?
I think they want to believe it so strongly because it's the societal norms nowadays. I feel like people feel a lot of pressure to try all these different things to make their bodies, more attractive or clear up their skin or whatever it is. So I think it's just like anything else nowadays. People just believe that it'll do magic for them and it'll, make their lives better, but really they're not thinking about the future and what it could possibly do to their skin down the road. So yeah, it's really frustrating that, these companies promote things like that. The thing that brought this up was a friend had texted in a group chat and said, I think it was Suntan City or one of those places was doing a deal where you could do the red light therapy before you went in the bed. And it's like, just like with the spray tans, when they try to get people in the bed before they get the spray tan, it's like, I just don't understand the point of that, and it's just misleading, and it doesn't necessarily do any good to put that misinformation out there. So
yeah, as you were talking too, it had me thinking, I feel like we live in a time where we really want fast solutions, quick fixes. And so it's sort of like companies that offer red light therapy and stuff are sort of preying on, yeah, you've been told that tanning is dangerous, but you can tan and do the red light therapy at the same time, and then you'll be okay. And there's just absolutely no evidence, of course, that is true.
Yeah. And I think it's just, again, one of those things that people buy into because it's put out there as such that it's some magical cure, but I think you have to have a little bit of discernment when you're thinking about whether or not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Really think about, they don't have your best interests at heart, I remember the times after I had my melanoma removed that I went to go get spray tans, and they were always trying to get me to do the 15 minutes in the bed before, and I kept saying to them, like, no, they just don't, like, it's all about the sales for them. It's less about,
Mm-hmm.
that was always really frustrating when I'd walk into a tanning salon after, and they didn't understand. I don't want to do the bed, I just want the spray tan. They're very pushy about it, and it's hard sometimes for people to say no, and they just keep pushing until they sell it to you. And I think that's a big factor in it.
Yeah, because it really is about making money and profit, and they're trained to overcome those objections because
Mm-hmm.
the company knows they're going to get the objections. And when we're talking about profit, it sort of brings me to healthcare too, because I think that's where a lot of our barriers in healthcare
Mm-hmm.
really surface, is because unfortunately in our country, healthcare is a business. And that's where both of us are very involved with ACS CAN. And one of the things that we really try to do is remove a lot of those barriers to access to healthcare, make it equitable. And then as young cancer survivors, we're also really taking on that role of giving young people a voice in the cancer community, which isn't always often represented. So now you're ACS CAN's Vice Lead Ambassador for your state. And then we both were just in Washington, D.C. This past September, advocating for more cancer research, access to early detection. How did you first hear of ACS CAN? And then this is a question that I get a lot, is how I got involved. And I sort of fell into it. But so I'm also interested to hear how you got involved with ACS CAN.
Yeah, so back in 2018, so that was about a few months after I got my melanoma removed, the doctor that removed it for me was working with ACS CAN on increasing the tanning bed age in the state of Nebraska. And so they, kind of pulled me into that fight, and I went and spoke at our state capitol to I think it was the health committee, and gave my testimony. And then, I did some TV interviews spreading the word about what we were working on. And then I just kind of slowly started getting in contact with our grassroots manager at the time. He was kind of setting things up for me to do. It's actually funny, a few years later, I met someone at college, a mutual friend actually, and she had melanoma. And so we got connected. And so we both kind of started doing more work with ACS CAN. And it was nice to have someone, that was young and had been through it, because I was alone for like 3 years I didn't have anyone else that had melanoma or experienced what I did at my age. And then about, I would say, I think it was a year ago, I decided to take the Vice State Lead Ambassador role for Nebraska. And yeah, it's been great. We're working on our biomarker campaign for 2025 right now. And it just gave me an opportunity to share my story and get involved in a way that meant something to me and that I could actively see change. And I do see a lot of change happen working with ACS CAN. So it's been such a great experience to get to go to, Washington, D.C. and meet with our state representatives and share my story and do my job as a constituent and let my voice be heard. And I think a lot of people could share their story and their voices would be heard, and I think it would make a difference. So
a quick break to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Low Ultraviolet. Low Ultraviolet is a safe and fashionable UPF 50+ clothing brand on a mission to educate and protect the public from skin cancer. You can use code podcast15 at checkout for 15% off your order at lowultraviolet.com. Offer valid 1 per customer. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
Yeah, I really think the more stories that are out there, the better, because even with the similarities and overlap, there's so many different stories. And the more stories that our lawmakers hear, it really helps highlight and emphasize the importance of these different bills and different things. You've had different access levels than I have, or different challenges or barriers than I have. And also, different age groups, different communities, all these different things have different challenges and barriers. And so the more stories that are out there, the more people that we can help, because we're learning about the different issues that are impacting different people in different communities.
Absolutely. And that's something I've really learned through my work with ACS CAN is how impactful, like I hear someone's story and then it sits in me and it's like, wow, like I feel like I diminish my story sometimes because it was such a small, brief thing in my life, but I still worry about it every day. I just found a mole a couple weeks ago that my heart dropped and I was like, oh gosh, like what does this mean? Am I going to go to my doctor and is it going to be worse than it was last time? So it's nice to have a space where I can meet other people and, collaborate and work on different ways to end cancer as we know it. And I really hope in my lifetime that we can see that. And I think the more work we continue to do with ACS CAN, we can achieve that. So
yeah. And when you mentioned the mole that popped up a few weeks ago, you actually sent me a message and were like, hey, I'm reaching out to you and telling you, like, I'm really scared. I'm really worried about it. This is what I'm doing. This is my plan. But I'm telling you because I know you'll relate. First of all, I mean, obviously, thank you for like trusting me and feeling like you can come to me.
Absolutely.
But we didn't even know each other a year ago. And that's where I think the other thing with ACS CAN that's really cool is we have an ability to use our stories to create change and really have an impact and hopefully end cancer, like you said, as we know it. But on top of that, we're really building community and we're finding people that are going through similar things. And every event I go to, I feel like I meet somebody else and you hear their story and there's just some way that it so resonates that you build almost an instant connection and they become friends almost in that moment. Like you and I, just over the course of like 48 hours that we were together in Charlotte, North Carolina, like really shared a lot of information. And I came away feeling like I had a really good friend because of that. And I think that community aspect is such an important part of advocacy that people don't always recognize. It's viewed as it's all about change, but it's also really about connecting too.
Absolutely. And without the connections, it makes it hard to do the work. So it's been great getting to know you and all the other people I've met through, at our events. And I was grateful when I found that mole that I knew I could trust you. And it really brought a lot of it made me feel so much better knowing I could send you that and you would, understand what I was going through and you really helped calm me down. So it's nice to have people like that to rely on.
And no matter what happens, I think it just is really helpful to have somebody that can share in any of the emotions. And then when we found out it was okay and your dermatologist wasn't concerned, I felt as much relief too, because I can really relate to that experience. And I think that's partly why also Lights of Hope is such a powerful thing that happens in DC. So for those that don't know what Lights of Hope is, it's a big fundraiser that ACS CAN does every year. And we sell what we call Lights of Hope bags, and it's a luminary bag. And for a $10 donation, someone can buy one of those bags. And then we decorate them in honor or memory of either them or somebody that they know that has been impacted in cancer by some way. And each person is able to bring 20 with them to DC. But then a lot of our states have local Lights of Hope nights too. So if they don't go to DC, we have displays all across the country. But the one in DC is so powerful and impactful, especially that first year that you go, because all 50 states plus Guam and Puerto Rico are there, and we have multiple advocates. And I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but it's thousands of bags that are set up all around the pond in the congressional gardens. And we have a big display. Each state has a large bag that's dedicated to somebody. And she's smiling because she may or may not have been on her state's bag. And but then we also have a place where people that, walk past and see it can also make a bag. And we've got the monuments lit up in the background. It's just such a cool moment. But what was the significance of that to you as a cancer survivor and advocate, but also to have your name on that bag? Because that is such an incredible honor.
Yeah, that was a big honor, and I'm very grateful to my grassroots manager for, doing that. And, when you first get there, you're just kind of hit with all these like emotions in a way of like it's kind of like you're visualizing why we do the work that we do, seeing all 50 states plus Puerto Rico and Guam, and seeing all the bags lined up, and that's how many people have been impacted by cancer. And they always have bagpipes playing, and it's always just like it's a sense of, wow, this is why we're here, this is why we do what we do. And to me as a survivor, it shows that I'm not alone, and it shows that my story matters. And for me, that's a really big deal because, excuse me, sometimes, again, as I've said this whole time, I tend to diminish my story, but being there, it makes me feel like I'm a part of it, and my story matters, and it's making a difference. So yeah, Lights of Hope is a really powerful event, and I hope that more people get to experience it. It really helps highlight, how many people are impacted by cancer. So it's just cool how it's also right by, the Lincoln Memorial. It's really serene, and it just makes a big impact on you once you leave. So I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's hard to explain. No, not at all. You don't have to apologize. It's really hard to explain, and you don't really know what emotions you're going to feel. And I think the longer you're there, the more range of feelings you do feel. The first year, I had no idea what to expect. And I have to admit, the second those bagpipes, I can't say that word today, the second the bagpipes hit, they really got me. I was like just crying.
Yeah.
And this year, knowing what to expect, it was really cool to be able to share that with you this year and with my mom. And then, I had another friend who had just lost somebody, and she's like, I haven't even had a chance to process the grief, and just was able to be there for her. And it's all the like overlapping and complex emotions kind of wrapped up in one night. And it's so powerful. And I also want to really reiterate that your story does matter, and you were chosen to be on that bag because, you've said it's easy for you to diminish your cancer, your experience, because it was early, but what you have done with that has been so impactful in just such a short amount of time. And so that being said, that really is like a perfect segue into what I always ask as the final question. What is the biggest change that you would like to see in regards to melanoma and skin cancer?
Yeah, I think that goes back to earlier when I talked about, wanting more education in elementary schools and high schools. I think all around there just needs to be more education about, what you're really doing to your body when you're out in the sun, and what the impacts of like not wearing sunscreen are. I think just making it more important, just like with anything else that we fight for. I think, just getting the word out there about melanoma can be very deadly, and I feel like that's, it's scary, but it's reality, and people need to be aware of what the real impacts are. So yeah, I would just like to see more education about it, and just kind of, I would like to see people take it more seriously in my personal life, and just, all around. I think a lot of people should take better precautions to protect their skin. So that's kind of how I feel about what I would like to see change for the melanoma and skin cancer.
Yeah, and I love how you're not just hoping for it, but you're really taking active steps to help make that happen. So for anyone listening, whether they resonated with their story, they want to learn more about how melanoma or cancer in general is impacting young people, or if they even just want to connect and learn more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm, always willing to listen, and I would love to hear people's stories, and continue to build that community that Jenn's brought me into, and I'm so grateful for Jenn that you've brought me into a community where I feel like my voice is heard, and I feel like I have people I can rely on. So I want to, give that to other people as well. So I'm on Instagram. I can give you my exact handle if you'd like me to. It's _Paige Grogan _. And then LinkedIn, I use that a lot for professional things and whatnot. So feel free to reach out to me there. Or Facebook, I'm on there. So yeah, you can find me on most social media platforms. And yeah, I would love to get connected with more people, and and create a bigger community.
Perfect. And we'll be able to add in the show notes where they can directly link to all of your social media handles as well. But I just want to end by saying thank you again, not just for taking the time to be here today and sharing your story, but really for everything that you're doing for not just the melanoma and skin cancer community, but also young people facing cancer, and then really the cancer community as a whole. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. This has been really fun.